Hey, I'm Scott at ediblemusic.com. Overcompression is a really difficult problem at first to notice because you're also trying to learn what compressors actually do in a good way. So it can be difficult to discern whether what you're doing with a compressor is having a positive impact or a negative impact on what you're working on. But in order to help you out with that, I want to show you some ways to hear overcompression and how it actually starts to have a destructive effect on the song that you're working on. And then from there, I'll show you how to avoid it and make sure that by being able to notice it, you can make sure that you're applying compression in a much better way. Here, I'm just using the Waves SSL plugin, and it doesn't really matter which one you're using because overcompression can happen no matter what plugin you're using. But a way to start to really hear overcompression is by cranking the attack really fast and the threshold quite low. And now you can hear how there's this weird motion that starts happening. Here it is without. It's very strange, and you'll notice it here on this transition especially as the instruments come back in. Really strange, right? So that's what overcompression sounds like. But even if you're doing a lot of compression on something, whether it's vocals or drums, there are ways to add a lot of compression without having that destructive overcompression effect. And a lot of it will come down to how you set your attack time. If you listen to this, as I slow the attack time, the drums will start to come out more. Because right now the compressor is responding mostly to the drums, but as I lengthen the attack time, I'll just do it slowly, one step at a time, you'll hear the drums start to come out more. So at this point, with a longer attack time, it allows those drum hits, those transients to come through better. And the compressor doesn't have to really struggle to wrangle them and respond to them as fast as possible, which causes it to start squashing them down when it's overcompressed. So with a longer attack time, let's compare how it sounds without the compressor in at all. Still feel a little bit of that, right? It's not as drastic as it was with our first settings, but it's certainly noticeable. And this is something that can happen, that pumping can happen mostly with very percussive or rhythmic elements that you might have. But if you've got everything in here, like we do, then it will start to impact everything that's coming through it. So if you have your compressor on the mix bus as I do here, then it's usually a better idea to have a longer attack, which allows those drum hits to come through, and to lighten up on the threshold so that you're not doing too much compression. As I said earlier, the amount of compression is closely dependent on the other parameters because you can compress a vocal quite a lot, or you can compress a pad or a synth by quite a lot, and it won't have that same kind of destructive effect so long as the parameters are set in a pretty nice way. So here, if I increase the ratio to 10:1, then we're already getting a bit of that pumping. But if I drop it down to 4:1, you can still hear it, but it sounds a little bit more rhythmic. The compressor isn't struggling as much. I would also set the release time to something very fast. So that's the other parameter that you would want to think about. Overcompression can happen at the beginning of a sound when the drum hits, for example, but it can also be maintained if you have too long of a release. Then the compressor isn't allowed to reset. It's basically just going to continue compressing and compressing and compressing without giving the program material, the music itself, any opportunity to breathe. So often, a way to avoid overcompression is to give your attention through the attack time and how it influences the beginning of the sound, and the release time, the way that it influences the rest of the sound. Let's move through these release times now. See, the release time there is so long that it's just compressing pretty steadily, but it sounds better, I find, if the compressor is able to have a bit of a rhythmic interaction with the song. So here, I think either at 0.1 or 0.3 sounded much better. And we'll even increase the compression some more. I wonder, which one do you think sounds better? I think 0.1, because it's so fast, it emphasizes the hits themselves, but having 0.3, it sort of allows the sound to come up a little more dramatically and almost increases the sense of groove here. It kind of influences the tempo or the sense of tempo as well, doesn't it? Here, because the compressor is releasing again, and I know we're only doing a couple dB, but you can kind of hear the way that it allows the hits in between the snare and the kick to have more presence if the compressor is releasing compared to 0.3. Right? So if you have your compressor set to some wild settings at first, a really low threshold, a really fast attack, then you'll start to hear what overcompression really sounds like and how it has a pretty destructive negative effect on the sound that you're working on, because the compressor will just be struggling so much. But if you are able to lengthen your attack time and then having done that as your first step, you can check with your release times as well to ensure that the release is moving with the dynamics of the song instead of just causing it to compress endlessly. It'll have a little bit of a dance with it, and then it'll start sounding really musical and cool, and the ratio will sort of just help to enhance those settings that you've got there. So if I've got a 10-to-1 ratio here, compared to a 2-to-1. Now the difference isn't all that drastic because the compressor is set up pretty well to manage the dynamic movement of the song. So do try to avoid overcompression. When you hear it, now you'll be able to recognize it and make some adjustments in your attack and release times and your threshold in order to make sure that your compression is running really nice and smoothly and helping to really improve the program element that it's working on rather than to have that destructive effect. Try it out.